Hello and welcome back to another RiftGuides WildRift video, and for today we are going to take a look at the newest patch notes of patch 5.0c. We have Kindred around the corner and everything you want to know about every single thing, and let's just hop right into it. Time flies, look at that, we are on the last patch of 5.0. We got not one, not two, but 3 events for you this patch, as well as a new champion, some new skins, and of course our regularly scheduled balance changes, so welcome to patch 5.0c. Reminder, content will be released throughout the patch. Separate but never parted, Kindred represents the twin essences of death. Lamb's bow offers a swift release from the mortal realm for those who accept their fate. Wolf hunts down those who run from the end, delivering violent finality within its crushing jaws. The interpretations of Kindred's nature vary across Runeterra. Every mortal must choose the true phase of their death. Kindred will be released on the 29th of March. Events: the Nautilus Pass. Ones on the streets are saying that there's a new warden in town. Play through missions and earn rewards. The Nautilus Pass begins on the 23rd of March. Kindred's Trivia. Spoiler alert, Kindred is coming out this patch. It's still a spoiler if you skip the previous section. Show off your knowledge and earn rewards. Name that champion. Kindred is tumbling through the rift and trailing behind them is a new champion. Careful now, don't get too close or you might get poked. You can earn guesses through completing missions, and if you guess correctly, there's a big prize waiting. Now let's move over to the hard piece of this patch, and here are the champion changes. Braum. We are buffing Braum's damage so you can protect his team better in both the early as well in team fights later on. Now, when he shouts "stand behind me," you can trust he will stay there. For his base stats, we have a base damage adjustment from 5480 to 58, base mana from 300 to 380, concussive blows from 1 second to 1.5 to 1.25 to 1.75, unbreakable damage reduction from 28% to 35 on level 1, and overall a 10% increase on the highest level, as well as gaining another 10% movement speed. So let's quickly break this down here. What are they doing to Braum? They're giving him more AD, making it more important for him to actually auto-attack, which is something Braum players never do. But exactly why are we seeing Braum changes? Braum is a champion that is fundamentally good into certain types of, well, compositions. He's very good into projectile-based all-in compositions, making it very difficult for the enemy to get anything done. But he really struggles being in a composition that wants to go in, because what does Braum realistically do outside of just peel? Braum is a peel champion, and he just never really engages, means he's a reactive champion. And in solo queue, often this will not be very much appreciated, because in solo queue that doesn't really do too much. And therefore his win rate will only be high into certain compositions, whereas his overall win rate will be relatively low, making balance changes to this champion kinda weird, and the way they're doing it seems kind of, well, interesting. But yeah, I don't really think this changes a lot. It makes him better, yes, but can he compete with Leona, Nautilus, and all of these all-in champions when his entire theme is just reactive? I don't think so. The next change comes to Mr. Graves. Graves hasn't been measuring up against other junglers, especially when he falls behind in items. We're tweaking some numbers around him so he can keep up. Base attack damage goes up from 64 to 66, and the base health goes up from 5070 to 630. So what does this do? Graves' attack damage is not only 2 AD because his passive converts AD into more damage due to how his passive works with the pallets. Another thing that's quite nice is to see his HP bar in the early game go up by 60, effectively being like 1 to 2 extra auto attacks the enemy needs to put you into lethal, well, kill range. And if you think about life regen, this might even get you to 3 extra auto attacks an enemy might need in the early game to kill you, which is a massive game changer. Now, if we think about this, what does this mean? This means effectively he is a lot better in mid lane now because he can just push the wave faster and go for an early invade, being a lot stronger, and he also pushes his jungle because he can go for more proactive plays during the early game because he can actually brawl it out. Nevertheless, he still takes about 3 items to fully scale and take over the game, if at all. Because that's the weakest state is early to mid game for Graves, and once he has scaled, he's finally a champion that can one-tap people. Jace. This is a champion we do not really want to see buffed, but let's take a good look. Jace hasn't been as impactful in the later stages of the game like we hoped. These changes will improve his survivability so he can hammer through more team fights. We're also making his acceleration rate duration longer so his cannons can be a bit more powerful. base stats. Base mana goes up from 345 to 420, haha, 420 bro, haha, so funny. Anyway, base health goes up per level from 112 to 120, base armor per level from 4.3 to 5, and the Thunderblow acceleration gate bonus movement speed bonus from full level to 3 seconds to full level to 4.5 seconds. I don't really know at the top of my head if this allows you to cast your first ability twice through this gate, but if it does, it's a, well, big change to the later games. But yeah, all the other changes, any mana change, like if you take a look at this, mana changes are usually a lower elo buff, because people can't really manage mana, so they just buff mana to make it easier and not too overbearing in high elos. But what I'm finding really interesting is buffing his HP and armor. Like, this champion doesn't struggle in lane. It's most of the time a skill issue, because the thing is, Jace is a high skill cap champion. So if the majority of the player base can't play him, that is to be expected because he's too difficult. But what happens if, like, this is the majority of the player pool, and this here, well, let me take another color. And this here is the elite player pool. So the champion will be very terrible for this portion, but borderline giga or mega broken for this pool here. So Riot has the choices to make. Do we buff him? Do we nerf him? What do we change? Because if they nerf him, then the lower elo people will obviously have harder games with him, and you know where this goes. And if you overbuff him in the higher elo, the champion will be picked every single game in pro play, just run over you through mid lane, and if he takes mid lane priority, he'll just invade you and you're basically dead on cooldown. Yeah. So I don't really know or understand why we buff Jace, but I guess, well, it's just the reason I presented you, because the lower elo population has trouble piloting him, and that's the issue. Next up comes Canon. His AoE damage has been through the roof lately. We're adjusting the numbers to make sure he's consistent with his opponents. Lightning Rush bonus movement speed loses 10%. The damage from this ability also goes down by 10 flat on level 1 and by 25 on max level. Slicing Maelstrom also gets a damage adjustment, loses 10 damage, 5 damage, and then goes back to the old damage on the highest level, but also loses 2% scaling. So let me talk about Canon's issues so far. Canon has access to Boots of Mana. Boots of Mana is one big tool which provides you with 8 pen. The next thing comes into play with Infinity Orb, which provides you with 15 pen. Now Infinity Orb also provides you with percentage pen. So these two items alone are 23 pen. If there's any way to get even more pen for the Canon, since most carries have like 30 to 40 magic resist, and then I think bruisers get like 30 to 50 per default, don't get me wrong, like anything close to that. And having this in mind makes it very difficult for Canon to just not one-shot you, because he deals magical damage and you don't have any resistances, therefore you just die. And yeah, Canon is a very cheesy pick on mid lane, has decent matchups since he's a ranged champion with a lot of poke damage, and a subset, like a very powerful all-in level 5, that many people just get caught off guard by. But yeah, he still suffers from the same issues as before. I think this is just a cheese nerf because the boosting win rates were relatively high for him. And I don't really think it warranted a nerf, but the Chinese API, like the data they showed, well, showcased an entirely different story. Now let's move over to Lee Sin, the Blind Monk. Lee Sin is able to get advantages early and deal massive amounts of damage to his enemies. These changes will give his opponents a chance to catch their breath. Base health 650, 630. Dragon's Rage damage from 100, 300, 500 to 100, 250 and 400, and we don't see any scaling changes if I'm correctly. So, okay, if a Lee Sin jumps into your face, he will kick you into the face, he will use his first ability into your face, and you will die. This will deal approximately 150% of your HP in damage. Now imagine he loses 50 to 100 base damage on that. What does change? I guess you just died to 140% of your maximum HP rather than 150% of your max HP. This doesn't realistically do anything to combat the overall power of Lee Sin, it just makes him slightly weaker with the health changes that barely do matter. If anything, if you're lucky, depending on what you're facing, you take one more auto attack to just not be killed, right? Whereas if you look at Graves, you might get up to 3 auto attacks. This is a massive change for Graves, and just a tiny change for Lee Sin, which is just there to be like, we nerfed Lee Sin, he isn't broken anymore, we are aware, we just nerf him. But again, a champion that is too broken, we just pull up the same example again. We have the majority of the player base here, and then we have the small elite pool here. Lee Sin is not the easiest of champions usually, and then you have a champion that is like 47 or let's say 46% win rate here, but suddenly he's 60% here, and Dryad's balancing idea is, hey, we want him to have 50% win rate across the boards, and it's like, how do we make that happen? Well, you remember the patch with Lee Sin being buffed in all abilities? That one. Yeah. Morana is the next champion. We've buffed Morgana's ability to protect her teammates so she can shine both as a damage dealer and a support. We're also tweaking her damage to monsters so she's more in line with other junglers. Tormented Shadow, damage to monsters from 225 to 195, and the Black Shield duration from 4 to 5 seconds. Okay, Morana isn't realistically a support, isn't realistically a mid laner. She can be played in all of these roles but is not good in any means. Her jungle is the best position, she has the most consistent impact given her power farm nature and can impact the game. Mid lane, she is at best a neutralizer that doesn't do anything and allows the enemy to constantly rotate around the map, because if I'm quickly drawing this up, let me use my Picasso skills, let me do it here. Wow, amazing. Morana will be locked here, will press W on cooldown, whereas the enemy is allowed to go anywhere they want, and Morana can't do anything about this because she doesn't have any tool to do anything about this in the first place. Morgana's only supportive tool is also her Black Shield, which, well, again, you have one carry then support, and what else do you provide? You don't provide any laning pressure, and yeah, it's kind of a weird thing. I just think because Morana had such a powerful clear, like I think 125 seconds or 124, just nerfing this slightly doesn't really change too much again, because if you think about overall spawn timers, it will not affect her too greatly, but I have to do a jungle clear to see how much it actually does, but I don't think it does too much. Next change on the list is Nautilus. Nautilus hasn't been as tanky as he should be, that is massive cap. These changes will let him soak up all the damage he needs to for his carries to shine. Titan's Wrath. The shield value goes up by 1% in the scaling department, and the damage goes up by 10. So what does this do? This is actually a buff for Nautilus jungle more than it is a buff for Nautilus support, unless you just go for the wave level 1. Nautilus level 1 can just skill his second ability, walk into the wave with a relic shield and insta-kill the wave without any counterplay and just play to reset. There's nothing you can do about this, he just has these base stats and nobody cares. In jungle, the 10 damage, since he has a decent modifier on his damage to jungle camps, actually could make a difference for a few seconds, and Nautilus jungle clear has already been very fast, so this is at best a buff for Nautilus jungle, and Nautilus has already been fine, but he's a highly committal champion, which means if you commit and your teammates don't follow up, you will just, well, sadly die. Which means, again, this champion, if anything, suffers from bad teammates more than it suffers from, well, his own stats, because his stats are more than fine. Sarapen, our blossoming pop star, could use some more limelight. These changes will help her reach the stardom she deserves late games. Surround sound, the cooldown goes down by 1 second in the late game. Or just 1 second overall, that's a crazy change. Movement speed bonus, full level from 20% to 27.5%. The shielding value goes up by 30 on the highest level, starting with the second level of the ability by plus 10, then plus 20, then plus 30, and the ability scaling power is reduced by 5%. The healing also gets a nice increase by 1%, however you have to think about this in the following way. Since the more allies are caught in the healing, like the double cast of the second ability, the more powerful it gets, so it's just not only 1%. It is an empowered version, because I think per member it's 50% increased. We are toning down Syndra's damage so she's not overpowering the other mages in-game. She is still going to be a strong late game carry, but not unreasonably to deal with. Transcendent. Ability power increases when gaining splinters to 15% to 12%. Force of Will. Cooldown goes down, goes up from 11 to 12 seconds, so 1 second change, and the damage goes down by 15 on the highest level, by 5 on the second level, and we have a 10% ability power loss. What does this specifically mean? Again, this is a change that doesn't impact the Syndra gameplay too much. She will still one-shot any squishy there is. She might need one extra spell for a tank champion now, but fundamentally speaking, this is more like a slap on the wrist and doesn't really kill this champion. Talon, our beloved baby. Our newest Noxian assassin has been clearing the jungle real fast, so we are nerfing his damage to monsters. We have also noticed that he's pretty slow vaulting over walls, which is subpar for an assassin of his caliber. Now he'll be able to go through terrain more flexibly. Blades and damage to monsters 120% to 90%, and Assassin's Path increasing the vault speed over terrain and turrets by 10%. 100%. So with the passive, Talon has a very fast clear. If you run the empowered attack setup, it's like 133, and if you run the precision setup, it's 137. This change might not even do anything, or not too much, because most camps in the early stages, if you clear for the first time, are left on very awkward HP values. So if you smite them after your passive, they're already like 100 HP below the smite damage. So theoretically speaking, you would still have the same time, and it would only be like I think 2 to 3 seconds of a slower clear, depending when you get your level 3. But yeah, it doesn't really do too much, I believe. Still a very powerful champion, just needs people to play properly, learn about how to do combos, what items to build, and maybe just look into crit Talon a tiny bit. Champion has a very high skill ceiling and is rewarding very good play. If you play poorly, aka do combos wrong or get caught off guard, you don't really have any tools to protect yourself outside of your ultimate ability or jumping walls, which depending on the situation might not be fast enough. But yeah, I don't think that does anything in the sense of making him weaker as it is, it just makes him slightly less powerful. Let's put it this way. Volibear bug fix. Volibear, who told him that he can disable the Nexus? Disable no longer applies to the enemy Nexus with the Stormbringer with his ultimate ability. Cool. Yeah. Amazing. Wukong, the Monkey King. He's getting his highly anticipated rework this patch. Now he should be able to survive longer in teamfights, deal more damage, and have more room for outplays. Base stats: base health regen from 9 to 12, crushing blows, remove crushing blows, basic attacks apply marks on the target that deal bonus damage from each stack maximum to 5 stacks, and he gets a new passive called Stone Skin. Wukong gains stacks of Stone Skin when he attacks enemy champions with base attacks and abilities. Each stack grants him 10 to 18 armor and 1.5 max health regeneration every 5 seconds, up to 3 stacks. So on level 1, depending on how it scales, it is 30 armor if you do auto attack, Q auto attack, instantly 30 plus armor, and a nice regeneration buff. Golden Staff removed her health regen. The new passive is Golden Staff adds an empowering effect on Wukong's base attacks every 12 seconds. Takedowns will reduce Golden Staff's passive cooldown by 2 seconds. The cooldown of the passive will be reduced by 2 seconds per level, and killing enemy will refresh the cooldown. Damage of the empowered attack base attack is 50 plus 35 to a 50% attack damage scaling. Interesting. Curious to see how it works in game, because if I understand this correctly, can you get this constantly? Like, do takedowns reduce the cooldown permanently? Because you see, killing a champion is refresh the cooldown, or oh no, it's never mind. Okay, takedown and kills. Okay, never mind. But yeah, curious to see how much this does. But cooldown of the passive will be reduced by 2 seconds per level. Like, there's 15 levels. How does this work? The math isn't mathing. I need to see the champion in game. Warrior Trickster. Now the clone can move with the joystick control and mimic Nimbus Strike to dash. Nimbus Strike. Multiple dashes to the same target. Damage is also being changed. We have a slight damage buff to the ability. Interesting. And for his ultimate ability, we have a damage buff on the maximum HP. Interesting. Can't wait to see the full assassin Wukong coming from stealth and one-tapping you into the next season. I really don't know if this, like, it really depends on the damage he does, if he's viable in the Baron lane. If he does too much, it will be fine, but if he doesn't, then will his sustain, like the life regeneration, be enough to make up for it? Curious to see that one. I need to see it in-game to make a proper statement. But if he has enough damage, he might be an S tier pick, but if he doesn't, he will just be an A tier pick. As for the jungle, the more damage, the merrier. And yeah, if the champion has a good jungle clear, he will be a very good jungle, again, then S tier. If he doesn't have a good jungle clear and he struggles with overall all these things I just mentioned, then he might just be doomed into A tier. Because in all reality, there's only 5 jungle champions that are borderline broken. We have Evelynn, we have Hecarim, we have Kha'Zix, we have Lee Sin, and we have Talon. All of these champions, giga broken, free LP. Next up comes the Yumster. Yumi has been protecting her best friend a little bit too well. These changes will make sure she's measuring up against her opponents and allows partners to have more decision-making power when it comes to her abilities. You and Me adaptive power. We see a nerf to the per level scaling, and yeah, that's kind of it. The final chapter ult cooldown is also being increased by 10 seconds and the root duration is being reduced by 0.25 seconds. Okay, please, I will actually open up the notepad, I don't care. Okay, how to fix Yumi, I don't care, you will all listen to this. Nerf base stats for lane. Please, nerf HP. Nerf heal. If you want Yumi to be fixed, then make her actually an enchanter that can die. There's no reason that Yumi has base stats of a real champion when she's not even a real champion. Nerf HP, nerf the healing. You should not be allowed to heal roughly for 100 on level 1 with just your E, while also providing a shield, while also having, I think, 540 HP without any support item, and then you can buy Relic Shield and inflate this by another 125, and then who can kill you? If a Yumi isn't realistically punishable in lane outside of having very selected champion choices, then I think it's just flawed to begin with. But yeah, if you play against Yumi, leave the lane, go for other lanes, because if you don't kill Yumi instantly, she will just sustain and you will lose, which is the thing why you should nerf the healing. Anyway, back to the main part. Double cast changes, I don't think we really want to talk about them. I'll just, scroll through them quickly, like here, Zeri damage changes, Kai'Sa damage changes, you see all these changes. If it interests you, just take a good look here. Was there gameplay changes? We've noticed the length of double cast games are dragging out too long. The pace of the game can get sluggish, especially in late game. Meanwhile, the buffs from Braum, Nash, and Elder are not strong enough to push the team to the ending of the game. We're tweaking both sure to make blah, 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 blah. Okay, nothing of this matters. I would really have them address this for the real Rift, because 12-minute Nasher is not impactful at all. Doesn't do anything. It needs to change. I think if you get a 12-minute Nasher, it should disable Nexus Shield. In all honesty, just make it disappear Nexus Shield. If you take an inhibitor while you have Baron, make it that Nexus Shield doesn't spawn. Period. Have the Baron buff, duration increase, mini damage, blah 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 blah. Like, I'm sorry, Nexus double cast, cool mode and stuff, but I do not really care. I would rather have all of these changes for the normal Rift. But yeah, let's move on. Gameplay changes. Items: Berserker's Greaves. We are buffing the cost efficiency of Berserker's Greaves to make it a great option for champions that rely on auto attacks. Base stats: attack damage 18 to 20, attack speed 30 to 35%. I don't really think this does too much, because it will only change the choices for Alacrity to Bloodline or Bloodline to Alacrity, unless I don't think there's even a scenario in which you would consider this an option to go Alacrity and Berserker Greaves and only have Bloodthirst as your sustain item. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think it does too much. I think Gluttonous Greaves are just too OP, is what it is. Divine Syndra. Divine Syndra hasn't been offering players the best value for their gold compared to other items. We are adjusting its price and stats to make it consistent with other items. Full price 345 to 3400. Maximum health loses 25. No, maximum health grants 25 health. You gain health? Huh? Okay. Divine Syndra is probably one of the most broken items in the game, if not the most broken item in the game for what it does for you. And yeah, that's quite an interesting take, because the item is batshit broken. They could honestly make the item, like, if you think about this, okay. Making this item cheaper, like 50 gold isn't as relevant, but also granting it more stats, I don't really understand why. Like, you could make the item 2500 gold, cut the HP of the item to 200, and the item would still be broken for its effect. And that's the issue, the item's effect is just broken. It completely counters so many champions and makes it so difficult to balance. Like, this item is theoretically, you can't balance this item. Gargoyle. We're buffing Gargoyle's active so tanks can effectively use the shield in fights. We're also changing the damage reduction to disappear when the shield is broken. Stoneplate. Gain a shield that absorbs damage of 20 to 25% of maximum health decay in 4 seconds, and the cooldown is being reduced from 75 to 60 seconds. If the shield breaks early, the damage reduction will end. So in reality, this is more of a buff to Zoe that picks up Stoneplate than it is to tanks. It's nice to have, like, for example, if you're Dr. Moonbro and gain like a 50k shield with a Gargoyle, there's nobody that's gonna break through it anyway, right? Realistically speaking, which tank Gargoyle is being broken down? I can't think of a scenario unless we are like in Giga late game. So yeah, I don't really, like, I think it's just a change for the sake of changing something. But I don't think it's going to do too much. It's more like a change that's nicer for Zoe, or potentially 80 carries, in fact. Spear of Shojin. Spear of Shojin hasn't been having a great performance in the early game. We are buffing its power in lane, making sure it's not overpowered for team fights. Dragon Awakening. Increases ability haste of basic abilities by 25% for 10 seconds after casting an ultimate, previously 8 seconds, and grants 25% movement speed, previously 30% that decays over 3 seconds. Scoring a takedown within 10 seconds, previously 8 seconds, refreshes the ability's duration. New effect is Rising Dragon, 5% movement speed is gifted on top. So what does this do? This makes the item better for Hecarim, because Hecarim is now not dependent on pressing ult to gain the benefit of the movement speed, allowing people to basically just be faster on the map, which is also quite interesting if you build all the other items that I'm talking about a tiny bit later with Black Cleaver and Trinity Force. But now let's talk about Stormrazor. Stormrazor has been getting outshined by its fellow marksman items. We are buffing its passive to make it more valuable to pick up again, and Jace attack gain 50 to 120 to 65 to 135, bonus magic damage, and slow enemies by 75%. For 0.5, now 0.75 seconds. Issue with this item is it's basically a crit version of Duskblade. Bloodthirst is too broken, provides you with sustain. So yeah, Stormrazor doesn't really have a place right now, to be fair. Trinity Force. Trinity Force passive name has been changed, so it no longer shares the same name as the one Black Cleaver has, Rage to Valor. So you have all these movement speed items. You have Black Cleaver, you have Trinity Force, you have Spear of Shojin. So these three items can all be picked up by Hecarim, effectively making him even more powerful than he is, because he gains more movement speed for free. Having a champion that directly scales in damage with movement speed is quite interesting. Also having a jungle that has access to more movement speed items that allow him to be faster on the map and faster in fights make him even more powerful. So what does this do? It makes it an immediate buff towards junglers again, which, well, who would have loved to see jungle buffs, right? Yeah, nobody. Rune Changes. Contraction, Hackstack, Flash, Rapture, okay, whatever. The channeling time has been optimized for when it's been less than 1 second. When channeled for less than 1 second, you will dash the distance as if you channeled for 1 second. Does this mean you even have to channel anymore? Like, you just have an insta-blink of a wall now, no? If you do it properly, you have an insta-blink of a wall, so what's the point? Huh? Riot! I don't understand. Contraption, item crafting. Item crafting has been too expensive to use. It's been sitting unpicked, gathering dust. To make it more appealing to pick up, we are adjusting the amount gold needed to purchase an item outside. Generate a stack every 180 seconds. You can buy items in the fountain, which costs 1 stack and an additional 150 to 50 gold now. So what does this do? It grants you on passive on the map, and you can buy items wherever you are, but the issue is it directly competes with other runes, and it only, like, if you're jungle, most of the time you'll play with Overgrowth and another main tree. So the question is, what do you want to drop to have this kind of rune? Because think about this, okay? If Overgrowth in the jungle grants you between 300 and 500 value, that is 1500 gold plus. Does this even compare to this? Does WildRift tempo matter enough for it to be a difference maker? These are all questions you have to ask yourself, so outside of very peculiar scenarios or very interesting, like handcrafted scenarios, I don't think this will make too much of a difference. As for skins, we have more than Nautilus, we have Warring Kingdoms Jarvan, the 4th Mythic Krober, Giggity Walls ready, Hoof and Lamb Kindred, Pajama Guardian Cosplay Urgot, Battle Academia Jace, Battle Academia Caitlyn, and that is it for today's video. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and obviously come back for more RiftGuides content. See you!